knowledge starts with the individual.
What's shaking? Welcome back to All In. I'm your host, Rick Jordan, and I'm talking fast today because my guest that's coming on right now, we've already been going. So the stuff that we're just injecting into the show, we've already had some amazing technical conversations because she is the co-owner of the digital Sandbox, and a marketing professional with 15 years of experience. But the cool thing is that she has partnered with a large company in the tech space called Kaseya to advance cybersecurity compliance and prevention. So she is helping a tech company with the tech, helping a cybersecurity company with their own cybersecurity, which is pretty amazing. Amanda Poplin, hello.
Hello, Rick. How are you?
I am lovely today. And, I don't know. I know we're just kicking it off, but we were told we just started into it, didn't we?
Yeah, I know.
So we'll get back.
Way on people.
We'll get back into it. I know that's going to be injected here somewhere in the show, but there's so stick around for that. We got into a lot of really cool stuff about malware and the newest stuff that's out there to really trick even someone like Amanda or myself. That are things there, even with our knowledge and our backgrounds, the stuff that's coming out is just so crazy in just its ability to just snag our brains and shift us into that mode to where we're going to get sucked into these schemes too. Isn't that crazy, Amanda?
It is. Well, it is absolutely crazy. And it's gotten, I want to say, I think I began to get worried the beginning part of December before SolarWinds broke. So I can forensically go in and do a trace, and I do it with my brain. So I'm very good at that, which makes me a great SEO person.
Yes.
Yeah, because I'm kind of like Rain Man when it comes to data. I can pretty much take data set and it looks fumbled to everybody else, but I can trace it very fluidly. And it might take me 8 hours or a day to find it, but I do pretty well. But yeah, so, it wasn't more of the content of the email that I saw. It was how it bypassed the security filter that was put in place on the particular client. It bypassed the email security altogether. And Microsoft didn't even flag it either. Now, what was the most interesting thing, and I'm very fortunate, I know a lot of awesome tech people. I do not pull the awesome tech card very often, but if I have to go and call in a favor, I have some pretty good people with some really good high up credentials. And I don't do that. I haven't had to utilize it, but in the last few months, I've actually utilized more of their skill set because I needed to make sure what I was seeing kind of understood. But so it was a phishing, just like a generic phishing thing. Hi, give me $10,000 to the accounts payable person. So it was a poor attempt. You can definitely tell that it was a scam. However, it did have an actual setup account, with the like a real checking account, and it was supposedly put into this employee's name. However, the employee obviously did not request for the stuff, and when he called the bank, they said, yeah, the account's for real, but it's not in your, I can't confirm if it's in your name or not. He said, okay. So ran a trace on the email, saw where it kind of originated, because he was actually popping in. He was logged into 4 different places: Miami, South Dakota, North Africa, and 2 locations in North Africa. And this was minutes and minutes apart, right? And I was sitting here going, at some point, I think Microsoft has to figure out that this is happening, and this should be odd and weird.
Yeah.
Do you know what they were using? They were using an old version of online exchange. When I saw the EXG7, I was like, oh, no, they didn't. Here's the crazy thing. So the person that it, came from, it did not, if I forwarded it to that person within our domain, he didn't get it. And it was like a ghost, complete ghost. It just did not work. So Microsoft's solution is, well, you don't utilize our solution, so you're going to have to go to your security people. And so when I go to the security people, I'm like, this is really weird. I said, I've never seen anything ghost itself like that. And it scared me. It scared me quite a bit. And I think what made it even worse was because they didn't have the tools put in place to be monitoring, for their dark web activity, or really have the most updated equipment running. And so when I saw that come through and I had somebody basically ask me, he goes, well, what do I need to do? And I said, he goes, how did this happen? I said, I'm not really sure. And unfortunately, with the tools that I'm provided, I cannot provide that information for you. The best thing I can tell you is he's like, well, they don't have my social security number. I'm like, I don't know. That person obviously bought the $2 version of you.
Yeah, no kidding.
However, you could be a $20 version, which gives you the full credentials or whatever. And I said, do you want to take that chance? Because it's going to be a lot more difficult to clean up and explain to people when you go to build a house, you want to grow with your business. I was like, it's just too much. Do you really need to worry? Should you really kind of just shrug it off? Absolutely not. And at that point, because I had not seen anything quite like that, I just had this was like first part of December, and I can't remember when SolarWinds happened. What was it, like mid-December, I think?
Something like that, yeah. Yeah.
But proceeding up to that notion, there was just so much coming through, so much, was happening, just weird things. But then when I saw that, I was like, oh my gosh. I'm like, these people are accessing backdoor sockets that really are old, right?
Yeah, yeah.
And of course, what happened with SolarWinds? Somebody goes and implants something that hibernates itself for over 2 weeks and then begins to collect data. And I don't know about me, but I don't kind of want people knowing what the nuclear weapon codes are. I kind of get scared that even the president knows what the nuclear weapon codes are.
That's funny.
I would not want to be tasked with that heavy burden.
Yeah, no kidding. That breach was very interesting too, because there's some keys in what you said that even those in our industry don't really understand, and it's the way that the humans think, and that if we could even just use the generic term hackers. When the SolarWinds was implanted, it was 2 weeks before it started gathering data. And then it was a while after that before anybody even noticed anything. And we call it a foothold, right? So they established their foothold. And when that happens, when you finally notice that something's a little crazy, they've been in there for weeks, if not months, if not years already. And now you're just figuring this out because they'll gather data. And this is, even with ransomware, it was almost like when the ransomware kicks in, they've already been on your systems for an average of about 6 months. They've had that foothold there, and they've been just monitoring traffic, monitoring your data, everything from data at rest to data in transit, and gathering information about how you do business, gathering it's intel. It's not systems and that kind of stuff. It's intel about you as a person, as a company, to see what your communications look like. That way they can target you with something that you just told me about. Is this, the fishy, really weird looking thing that says, hey, send me $10,000, accounts payable, whatever. Right. People are keen on those now, at least they're getting to that point. But when they add an information like you were talking about, like a checking account number that's legit, in that person's name or whatever, now they have that insider human information that would not have existed, or they would not have known without having that foothold established in the first place. So the point to where you see oh no, somebody's in my system, that's just when you notice it. That's it.
Exactly.
They've been there already. They've been camping out, hiding in the closet, right? Just roaming around your house, in your castle without you seeing them, almost like a ghost scenario for months, if not years already.
Yeah. I mean, and I think just the very nature with how pretty much when, especially when companies that are held responsible for the high-end security because they're obtaining super sensitive information on people like you and myself, it's not fun, because then it takes people several months to come forth. I mean, I think I was just reading the other day, there was a hack, and I cannot, believe it or not, I can't remember. It's an insurance company in the Northeast. They actually got ransomware back in March, I believe. Do you know they still have not made a public statement? And they ended up having to pay several $1 million to get their data back. Now, my father, who is a network engineer, he goes, I don't understand why people can't back up. He goes, I got hit with ransomware several times over my career. I just backed up everything, restored it. So it really does expose the simple fact these people are not just, randomly looking. They're looking for people who, like Colonial Pipeline, who are having discussions here and there, but clearly they're not going to implement anything. And I think it's ridiculous when the IT managers quote it for saying, well, we were looking into cybersecurity solutions.
Yeah. we had this thought one day.
It was discussed. And then the next thing you know.
Yeah.
And, so you have to break it down. And Tim, his name is Tim Nitron. He is, I can't even remember the name of his company, but he's, him and his partner run a MSP, and they're in kind of like Western North Carolina. He's in Tennessee. And they kind of float around in this area. And he just said to me, he said, he said there was a company that they were having to work with. They kept going to him saying, to the owner, look, you need to get something. You have to have some kind of preventive. Oh, I'm fine. Guess what? He got hit. They were down for almost a month. So not only did they feel bad for the bill that they had to give that client, because that's $185 for technicians to specialize in recovering this stuff. Yeah. So he said on a $30 million a year business, if they're generating that much revenue, he says that comes up to $86,000 a day that you lose with revenue. Yeah. When you cannot work. Yeah. And when he put it in terminology like that and you broke it down into a day, Colonial Pipeline, I think which I think this is a very big flop. They said it was 500 million was their revenue. So I broke that down. That's almost $42 million a day, excluding the $9 million or however much they had to pay to get their data back. Sure.
That's insane.
And there's no excuse for that. There's absolutely no excuse for nobody to be just him hauling around, especially with an organization that large, running on outdated Outlook.
Yeah,
it's ridiculous, and policies. I mean, it's nice to say, I'm glad that you brought, this antivirus 3 years ago, but the landscape is completely different. I can't keep a hold of it, and I do this for a living, really. And if I've seen the damage that it does with one person who got a credit card offer from somebody's mailbox. Took her 7 months just to catch the person. That's excluding the damage that one person did. And that's not on the web. That's not, the internet's everywhere, right? And I hate to say it, but, just as well as I do, identities, your credentials, they're sold kind of like an eBay, They go anywhere from like $1 to $13.
Depending on what information is included in that record. Yeah,
exactly.
If it's just your name and your email address, that's on the cheap side. But if they want the full package, that jumps up, and now they've got social security number, address history, your kids' names, your social profiles, your bank account numbers, even your bank account logins. Yeah, that's the premier version, right?
And yeah, that's like a whole other carbon copy of yourself. How many carbon copies do you want? Because I really would hate to see somebody who's got a business owner that has really good credit, and I know a lot of them, to not be able to go in and borrow money from a bank, because I think they're going to be really confused.
Yeah.
When they're told no, because they're not used to being told no. And a lot of it comes down to, okay, so you don't want to spend 11 grand. Dude, it's expensible and it's a tax write-off. I mean, I'm like, you're not logistically, making sense in any regard that would, deter me. Now, if I told you that you needed to spend $6 million, I think you kind of should probably reassess that. Because I can imagine that would be very expensive. However, it's a lot more expensive when your company's not up and running. And I know really wealthy people who've had their identities hacked, and they make some of my clients, look like paupers with the amount of money that they do. So I can't even imagine on a large scale, like having a lot of money and having your identity stolen. We actually had a client that happened to, and he said, it's the worst thing that will ever happen to you. He goes, that is no joke. And I wish I could make him the poster child, because he really is, he's a demographic that, for the large part, people think, are untouchable, well, they're not. They're more of a target. They love it. I mean, they love credentials. They love credit card information. I can't begin to tell you how many times I have clients that have to switch their information 4 or 5 times a year on their credit card. It's just unfathomable. And like, at this point, like, when are you going to accept the fact that you need to be aware that this is no joke? And if they have access to your personal information, imagine what they can do with a whole network of people who are doing very well, who are great sources and just as resellable as you.
Yeah. Do you feel like we've crossed a threshold now to where the awareness is at a point to where everybody should at least know about it, and now it becomes blissful ignorance if they do nothing about it, almost like stupid ignorance?
I don't feel that we're 110% there. I do think that we're immensely a lot more closer than what we were, because I think as a country, and as we have not held any other company, these third-party companies who get these breaches, accountable. And so by the time this stuff gets told, it's several months down the road. I got my information hacked. It was just credentials. Yeah. They were accessing my Uber account, and because thankfully I set up 2-factor authentication, I was getting the authentication. I'm like, and even at that point, I wasn't putting 2 and 2 together. I had a couple of, instances like that just happen. And that's when I found out, Kaseya, they offer the DarkWeb ID monitoring. It's on a domain level. Okay. That is by far the most affordable tool that your company could invest in, because it's going to tell you what has been leaked out, when it's been, how it's been recirculated, and all of that data does get recirculated. So if something got hacked in 2016 and you still haven't changed your password, guess what? It's going to happen again.
Or you change the 1 at the end to a number 2, right?
Yeah, or you put, instead of, having your wedding date properly done, you could do it the English way. Well, yeah, people, and I'm a creature of habit. I'm sure you are, right?
Oh yeah, yeah.
So I just don't feel that America is quite there, but I do believe people need to be held accountable.
For sure.
Because security is obviously not a top priority to them. So with these insurance companies that are getting hit, or the Colonial Pipeline, we're going to have to pay for it. Basically, you got to think about it. The taxpayers are going to have to pay for that.
Yeah.
And I can't even imagine medical records being especially with these insurance companies, and all it takes is one person to open one email. And the hell that I had rain on me a month and a half ago pretty much made me basically say, I will no longer take on clients who do not have some kind of disaster backup plan.
Yeah.
And I don't like working on old hardware because it's old hardware. And I'm not that great of, I could put a computer back together. I could put a laptop back together. Don't ask me to put a server back together, because how I deal with servers and printers, not the way that you're going to want to deal with them when they don't work. And that usually involves something very hard and a lot of rage. And I'm a redhead, so you do the math on that.
That's great.
Yeah.
It's awesome. You're fire hosing a lot of things today. And, the biggest gap I see in cybersecurity, because, as you're talking about all these large scale breaches, right? With Colonial Pipeline, with, let's even look at Equifax a few years back.
Oh my, yeah. And just recently with the API.
Yeah, exactly. Those things, from an American public, because you said as America, we're not quite there yet from an awareness perspective. And one of the reasons I see for that is because there hasn't been an ownership of responsibility coming from the individual. It's, well, that was Equifax's problem, WTF
Exactly.
Equifax, so that was Colonial Pipeline's problem. WTF Colonial Pipeline, you're the ones that screwed up and you're the ones that have to fix it. But there hasn't been that transcendence yet to where it becomes, the reason this happened to me is because of something that I did or I didn't do. And that's why I got hit. Right now, it's like, I'm in the same pool as 100 million other Americans. It must be their fault. There was nothing that I could have done to protect myself. It must be their fault. And then the government steps in and says, we're going to create this executive order that says you have to do this. Right. Or we're going to research this. It was such propaganda that it got me so pissed off. I'm like, this is just saying, we know there's a problem. We don't know what to do about it. We're just going to try to make ourselves look good, because even the government passes responsibility over now to Colonial Pipeline or Equifax or Marriott or whatever else. The only way that we're going to make headway in cybersecurity in our own lives is if the individual says, I need to take responsibility for my own protection, my own safety, and I'm going to own that because it's up to me. Like you said, with multi-factor authentication, put that on all your stuff. Come on, that's up to you.
That's right. I mean, and I don't, and I hate to say, not everything that I do is, multi-factor authentication, but 98% of the stuff that I'm doing now is done. And
I don't have it on my Netflix account, but I sure as hell have it on my bank account.
Neither do I, or I kind of want to know if somebody's trying to get into my Square account,
Yeah, exactly.
Or try to hitch an Uber ride with me, like Park Mobile. Didn't even know Park Mobile got breached. And my stuff, because I actually put my personal and my business partner Jennifer's personal Gmail accounts in there because I have not ran it. I know that, stuff's been breached. Obviously, I just did not want to get the notifications, but I bit the bullet. Didn't even know Park Mobile app had been hit. And, that's got your car information. That's got locations that you've been to. It's just insane. And like you said, I've had so many people tell me, well, I invest in this and I invest in that. And if it doesn't work out, whose fault is it? Well, I basically stood in the office back in December and I looked at the guy and I said, well, it's not my fault. And I told you from day one, I don't work on really super old servers. I was like, I think you need to go back to your homeboys who initially set it up. And, I was like, because the Fabric of God's been making that run. And trust me, I think when we retire that server, it needs to go to Jeffersonian because it really has lasted so long.
It's like a mutant or something. Yes.
It's crazy. And they were actually running Exchange on-prem 2010. Okay. I have not worked with 2010. I don't even know if my dad remembers working with 2010.
Because it's 11 freaking years old.
Yeah. And 11 years ago, guess what? I was 20 something years old and an a-hole. So I didn't really want to even learn how to do stuff like that. I freak out when people do remote desktop. to connect to stuff. I don't know why, because it is, it can be a secure thing, but do you really want to take that chance?
Yeah, for sure. Oh my
kind
God.
of like, it's way too much. It's just, and like I said, knowledge starts with the individual, because you cannot naturally assume or point fingers, be like, well, I pay all these third party people to encrypt this data. Why would this be my issue? Why, it's not. I'm like, well, it's going to be when you have to call up your customers, okay? And you start circulating through the press that you've been hit, and you have to, I'm like, do you really want to take that chance? I was like, because I'm going to tell you now, guess who they're going to come to? They're not going to call, Square and make a complaint.
Yeah.
They're going to call you because it's your fault. And you can just not naturally assume, like you said, it's blind. It's just a blind way of living. It's kind of going, well, I know that I can't eat all this crap, but I'm going to continue to do it anyway. And then yet I know that that's what jacks up, my cholesterol, and I have bad heart problems in my family. It's kind of like you're running on just a cycle, and it's a hamster wheel, and I'm not a hamster wheel kind of gal. In fact, I get very nauseous on a hamster wheel. And I just recently made the decision to kind of sever ties with a company that I just professionally, I did not want to, I could not provide them, the level of time and cleanup that I wanted to continue to do. When I just inevitably, it's only a matter of time. It's not if, it's when at this point.
Yeah. And
I have my reputation to worry about. I want to work for, get contracts for the DoD,
Oh, exactly.
They're not, you become a pariah.
Yeah,
I mean, you're like the IT guy from Colonial Pipeline. Well, we did talk about it. They don't care. They do not care, but they will care when somebody is looking to point the blame. And unfortunately, I was not going to be, I did not want to be that person. And it was a very difficult decision. Especially financially. But I have my morals, and there's just too much I have seen. And when I had, a spear phishing attack happen in one location, kind of thought, I had somebody literally texting me going, I'm watching my email be created, go to a draft, and then delete itself.
Yeah.
And I'm not the one doing it. I'm like, what in the world did you do? This is where Graphis could have come in, because that would have kind of stopped it. And then, that expelled over, and then you're walking around going, well, what did you do? Well, I didn't open it. Okay. Well, are you from Miami? Do you live in Miami? Because that's where your cell phone was signed in on Saturday, but it was so weird. It's an old school technique. I'm pretty sure my dad could probably break this down a lot more. But it came in form of like an Adobe attachment initially. And it originated from it in our office. Okay. Somebody that they would know, click it to open the document. And then bam, that, it had your credentials, and what it was doing is it was kicking itself. So the emails were actually kicking themselves into like an RSS feed or an archived file. But guess how they were doing the emails? And this is an old school wild card. This is proper like exchange. It's so simple. It's stupid, right?
Yep.
They were taking their email, putting the first initial, starring out the rest to the last initial. And it had the domain. And that's how they literally were bypassing it. And I'm sitting here going, yeah, this, it wreaked havoc horribly for 3 days of my life. I did not sleep. And I think I had a actualization moment when my 4-year-old daughter woke up one of those mornings, walked in, she goes, "You didn't come to bed again, Mommy?" And I think that's when I made a decision.
Yeah.
At that point, I'm like, you know what? I'm not going to continue to clean up this mess because it's just going to get worse. And you know what? I'm not going to get blamed for it. And I pretty much, stood my ground when it came to that discussion in December. And I'm just not willing to risk my reputation, and ruin my career and ruin my knowledge by staying with people who are literally, somebody who's on a sinking ship and they don't want to see any change in it,
That's important for those that are in our industry too, when you choose to work with certain clients or certain people, because I've been in those scenarios before too, to where, and this comes back to the ownership of responsibility, is that generally speaking, there is that desire, for a client or an employer, if you're in our industry of cybersecurity, to say, I'm going to transfer that ownership of responsibility completely to you because I don't want to have anything to do with it. I need somebody to blame. That way it's not me at that point, when something does happen. And it's important for us in our industry to recognize that and not say, hey, I'm going to be the cleanup person all the time.
Yes.
I'm not a cybersecurity janitor. Now they sort of exist, I guess, but because
somebody has to do
exactly,
it, right? I mean,
but those are
rolls downhill.
Right on. But those are the ones that specialize, almost like crime scene cleanup crews, right? But when they come in after a bloody murder, that's all that's left to do is just clean up the blood. There's nothing going forward from that.
Exactly. And you're praying that none of the brains have dried. Because brain matter, concrete, completely impossible to get up once it dries.
For sure. There's no recovery. They're only there for cleanup. No. There is no recovery at that point. And those are the companies that specialize in that. So as we do business with people, we have to realize that there needs to be in our sales. And this is actually a good shift into a conversation, because I had a question around what your sales process is, things, how you make people aware, because I love your phrasing on a lot of these, but when we're using that, when we're in that sales process of just helping them understand that, listen, I'm not coming in to be the fall guy. I'm coming in to educate you to make the proper decisions that you need to do, because if you don't make the proper decisions on things that I recommend, it's okay, but I don't have to stick around.
Right. Yeah. Well, and I'm not, I mean, I think when basically, somebody just, half-heartedly goes, well, if it's not my fault, whose fault is it? Well, I hope you're not looking at me because I didn't build that server. I told you from day one, I wasn't gonna mess with that server. I don't want to mess with the server. Screw the server. The server needs to go. I said, I did you a favor getting you out of Exchange, so this way you wouldn't have a catastrophic fail with you running your Exchange on-prem. And I said, you're in the cloud now. And I was like, that's just one part of it. But now your whole schema has changed, the way that people connect, the way that people do stuff. And I said, and just with everything that's been going on and how easy and how much I'm seeing. I mean, when I sit down and kind of tell somebody, I'm like, I'm kind of scared.
Yeah.
And they're like, you're overreacting. Well, no, I'm not overreacting, because I'm typically very jaded to a lot of stuff, because in my particular profession, and we tend to have to clean up a lot of stuff. I do quite a bit, and there's just some. I've actually had one client. I go, I don't even know what the hell your person did. I said, I don't. It's like a crazy person constructed this network. There's no consistency. And I said, even on a basic level, there's basic consistency. People do things differently. They make it more difficult. I've seen that, but IT companies tend to hinder themselves, and they're setting themselves into a big, big fall. If they're not, look, no offense to Webroot, completely understand the product. No offense to McAfee. Okay. Whatever. To each his own, right? But when my dad called me and said, if I would have known this company, their cybersecurity was Webroot, I would have never worked for them. And I'm just going, they use WebRoot as cybersecurity. That's a thing. He goes, yes, Amanda, that's a thing. Okay, well, clearly it's not important to me, you know. And my dad works for Microsoft, and you know, and I've had him tell me, stop freaking out. Well, Dad, you don't see the way that I see.
Yeah.
You know, that's not your forte. I mean, you're not going to ask me to go wire a whole building, execute the cabling, and then set up a server. And turn me loose on it. I was like, I can maintain a server. I know how to get around the server. I was like, but do I want to build the server? No. That's best left for somebody who exceptionally does well. You know, because backups are very important.
Yeah.
If you're not backing up, I mean, just on a basic level, think about that. Think about how many people could have saved millions upon millions of dollars. Think if Baltimore, like the city of Baltimore, they've been hacked twice. So it was actually city council 3 years ago, school system last year. The city was almost bankrupt in like a week and a half because they couldn't move. And it just happened with just one person opening an email. You know, one person.
For sure.
And I knew that they knew who that one person was, and everybody knew it. And she probably had horrible things happen to her. I feel bad for them. I've actually seen people, they get hacked. They go to another facility or another place, and then they get hacked again. It's like, dude, it's not a curse. These people are following you because you're an idiot, and you're making it easy for them.
It's like deductive reasoning, right? You go to a complete other location. What's the same? Yeah. It's you. You know, common factor, common denominator. I would say, well, you know, I think if anybody has to stand in front of state senate to justify millions of dollars being sent, and you're a government entity, you're an idiot. And in fact, I would make it my point in life to make sure you never touched anything that was IT related ever again, because you're an idiot. And it all comes down to you're that lazy you can't back up. Yeah, right on. We've kind of danced around this the whole episode so far, but just for clarity for people listening, your field is incident response and forensic analysis. Yeah.
Yes. Forensically, well, pretty much anything. So if it goes, I can finagle my way through a server. I can trace the server very quickly to kind of before an incident happened. Like I said, I can look at data set on web traffic, pinpoint target audience that does not even appear to be target audience. And then I'm able to basically, I'm a web designer, and graphic designer in trade. I didn't want to be an IT person. I just got thrown into it because it was in our family. But then the passion for cybersecurity came in 2 or 3 years ago when I worked for Lisa Carter with Spartan Tech, and she really opened my eyes to a lot of stuff. And the passion just followed me because it was something to extend on, and to know that there are people out there who are protecting or trying to protect. It's a great thing, and I knew that I wanted to work for, I wanted to do more government contracting. I didn't want it to necessarily be our bread and butter. But WordPress, I'm an avid person. Anybody will tell you this. I'm totally against WordPress. I hate WordPress. If I could basically spend the rest of my career and my life educating people on the ways that they do not need to be dealing with WordPress, I would happily do it.
What platform would you recommend then versus WordPress?
I utilize with my clientele. It's by far the best platform is Judah.co. It's the agency level. So it's, it's AWS server hosted.
Yeah.
It does not allow you to have back access to the files or anything. Everything's locally centralized. But more importantly, they adhere to Google algorithm changes. And by far, they're superior in that. I've never seen any structure, any platform work that way.
Nice.
Work very well. And it's very, very nice. Very nice. It's just a good platform. It's very easy to train people on. Look, I appreciate WordPress. I've been around it long enough in my life, but when you have to like clear a server out from malware, or your site's been, somebody hacked your site and you had traffic driving away, to another website. I'm just like, this is too much.
For sure. And that is one of the biggest vulnerabilities with WordPress too, because I mean, even with Reach Out, we use WordPress because it integrates with so much. And
Rick.
But the host, which is the reason why we went with that, is Kinsta. I don't know if you're aware of them or not, but they're in essence a managed security provider for WordPress. So the focus is on security, and it's constantly making sure that the updates are there. They're constantly looking for all the footholds that could be established, and they're on top of it. They're almost like a U for WordPress specifically.
Yeah. Well, I'm lazy. Okay. And like I said, I'm a redhead.
Dude, it just works, right? Yes, exactly.
Well, no, it's just, it hit all of my pleasure points.
Yeah.
Just with customer concerns, the difficulties. I mean, I had trouble releasing a domain name from Wix.com. Okay. And I do this for a living. So I hate, like I said, I like something that moves. It's congruent. The platform changes. The platform's constantly changing. The SSL security certificates get generated automatically now. I mean, they work, the e-commerce Equid, that's a great platform too.
Yeah.
It's just phenomenal. It's absolutely phenomenal, because the thing about WordPress is there's a lot of plugins, and guess what? There's a lot of plugins that people get for free, or they hire a web developer and spend thousands upon thousands of dollars. Cause let's face it, if I have to deal with WordPress websites, I'm not charging you, peanuts.
Yeah. Okay? Right on.
You're getting my agitation, fee. That's
funny. That's great.
And it's crazy.
Yeah.
But look, I know people do it. I know people use it, and I have several clients who still utilize it. However, I like things to work, for themselves. I had one client. I worked for heavy construction sales, service, and rentals in a podunk town. Okay. They were from Canada, or they are from Canada. And I walked in a WordPress website, bounce back rate to their website before we migrated it over was 70%. Okay. That's astronomical. Wow. Like, my face actually goes like, what the heck's going on? I perfected it so much that by the time I left 5.5 years later, their website traffic was highly converting, basically anybody who went there, they stayed there because they knew what they were looking for. They were happy with the content.
Yeah. Yeah.
We also, were able to sell stuff. People were able to find us, halfway, in Utah or from, the Midwest, because we offered products that basically were short, in short supply. So I basically helped the last year I was there, helped the sales guy make his sales, right? He hadn't sold a mulching machine all year. And I was basically the reason he sold them.
That's awesome.
But when I left, it was 0.1%. Okay. 0.1% when,
wow.
Traffic does say a lot. It says a lot. And the bounce back rates, I don't do well. I start to get very uncomfortable over 29%.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
This is awesome. We really didn't get too much into the marketing side today. I'm hoping I can have you back for a part 2, and we can talk about that side of it too.
Yeah.
That would be incredible.
What? I would love to have Jennifer, my partner, on it. Yeah. She's from East Tennessee.
That's awesome.
She's the glitter. So
sweet.
I'm like, I'm done peopling for the next 6 months. Yeah. Don't ask me again.
That's awesome. So there we go. I appreciate that. So we'll do a part 2 specifically around marketing and the forensics and the data analysis around that too, because we're just starting to dabble that. But I've really appreciated our conversation today. This everyone listening.
I think you're amazing.
Well, thank you.
I think you're amazing.
Thank you very much. Let's do that. Part 2 is going to be coming up, everyone, and we'll try to even post those back to back. But stay tuned also, because share this out with a lot of people, especially if you're in the cyber industry, and listen afterwards after we end here, because there's going to be bonus content that we were talking about, Amanda and I, at the very beginning of the show before we before we actually started the show. So listen out for that, and you'll get some more information. But Amanda Poplin, the digitalsandboxgroup.com. Thank you for being on. This has been awesome.
Thank you, Rick. I can't wait for you to meet Jennifer.
Yes, awesome.
You are going to see a really weird dynamic.
Sweet.
It works.
Part 2.
But yep, exactly.
Yeah, there we go.